my thoughts on James Gunn's DC Slate. Next up on Just to Talk, so let's talk about it. And welcome to the Flicks Picks and the Nitpicks, and I am your host, No 718, and we're gonna get right to it, baby. I just wrapped up my first impressions on the video that James Gunn released, and you will find out that I didn't even realize it was a whole video where he shot straight from his mouth, which I do appreciate. That's one thing we're going to start off with. I do appreciate the fact that he's getting ahead of the fandom, getting ahead of the bullshit, and just telling you straight up exactly how he feels in real time right now and what's going on. Not so much what he feels, but what's going on in real time and what they have set up. So people have to speculate about, what DCEU projects is coming along in mind. He shot all them scoopers to bed. You're going to have to figure out who they're going to hire before they actually tell people out loud. And James Gunn is right on this Twitter got his Twitter figures going. He's ready to go shoot down scoops and tell you what it is. And this is going to be a very fascinating thing for tubers now to have to find a new way to adjust to how to scoop or discuss WB and their DCEU or DCU slate as it stands. With that being said, now let's get into the slate. They have something called Paradise Lost that I'm interested but not interested in because I liked how Zack set up that world. So to now be introduced to new characters and a new way to portray them, the only thing that could be fascinating to me is, especially if we're going to lower the budget, could you do something of a Paradise Lost really in a Conan-esque and Red Sonja-esque, the way the 80s did it, in that direction? Real practical effects, so you could get away with a lot of that and merge some updated mysticism within it, but scout some great locations, do some great practical shots and set building. Could you build a beautiful Paradise Island that they'll refer to it as, probably to separate themselves from what Zack Snyder did, but you could also Themyscira. Can we do that? And could we? And I think it's possible. I think it would be, anything is possible. You would have to be able to do it. But the design elements, man, you have to really do a big overhaul of everything that they've done already. I think that will be fascinating to see what could you do that is your own, but make it very, very interesting towards the world you're trying to build. I hope they go for a very warrior-based Themyscira. I know they got some other thing from Wildstorm, that group. Not familiar with it, so it'll be interesting from the ground up what they decide to do with that, how they'll make that fit in the DCU proper, because I know DC had bought a lot of characters. They got Grifter from Image, they got a lot of other characters in their wheelhouse that they acquired, and it's going to be interesting to see how they pepper that into that universe in and of itself. But Superman is the guy that everyone's going to be interested in, and it's going to really depend on who you get as Superman. And I still can't get Henry Cavill as Superman out of my mind. So it's going to be interesting who you can select that's going to make the fans at large see Superman in this new person and not keep thinking about what they lost with Henry Cavill. So that's going to be interesting and fascinating how they present that to the audience. It's something that I look not exactly forward to. I mean, in terms of the movie, because I kind of don't, but look forward to the movie because like I said, I wanted them to continue where they left off with what we just had. So I guess I'm probably still in the mourning process of it, or I'm just kind of over all of this shit. But once they name the guy, and I can see him in the suit, and as they roll it out, I know I'll be pulled in a little bit more. I just hope that they can make Superman an interesting character, multi-layered, and all the rest of it. Now, in terms of Swamp Thing, I didn't see that series that came out that everybody harped on and said was amazing. I plan on watching it too, regardless. But it'd be interesting to see how he said that tonally is completely outside of the DCU, but will still fit in there. And his selection seems very, and obviously he says part of Chapter 1. He says that Aquaman 2 of Blue Beetle will fold over into these things. So how will that work into your Chapter 1, which seems kind of all over the place? And I think that's what's the most interesting thing. They're still not, it seems like his Chapter 1 is not following the Marvel model, which I like. So it's not going, this is not going to be a very predictable universe where Superman come first and then this goes, then Green Lantern is having a series before it appears in a film. Like, this is interesting, because now you're weaving out something that no one is going to be absolutely nothing like what Marvel's doing, other than the fact that their Chapter 1 is like their Infinity War, gods and monsters. Well, this will be interesting. And and on that note, you could pull me in, but you're gonna really have to sell me on what you're going to present. And again, for me, coming from the guy that did a Suicide Squad, when I think about it, you writing Superman, well, that might work a little bit better if you're going for a more cartoon feel, because to me, that's what a Suicide Squad was. Again, judging off that film, I did not. It was cool for what it was, but again, it didn't fit in the universe, so I can't get mad at that. But some of the logistics in it was kind of goofy. Like I said, it was more Saturday morning cartoon, so I couldn't take your world that serious. It's going to be a lot more cartoon-esque. Not what I wanted in the DCU, but this is the direction they're going in, so I'll judge it against that. So we'll see how that will work, because his sensibility for a Suicide Squad was more closely aligned to me with what the Harley Quinn film with Birds of Prey, and those were the lesser two films of the DCU that I cared for. Those were the bottom of it. That and, Joss Whedon's JLA, Justice League, but that kind of goes without saying. I mean, Joss Whedon's Justice League, yeah, I said that right. Zack Snyder's far exceeded that, you already know that with me, but bottom line, again, James Gunn, there's things he says that's interesting there, but his actual film that he did just ain't cut the mustard for me. Ain't cutting the mustard for me. Maybe as a DC head now but they kept saying before he could do whatever he wanted before. So I don't know. I mean, that movie, I felt like he was able to do whatever he wanted, and it was just not what I would have liked it. It was entertaining, but it was kind of ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? So with that being said, the fact that he also said his directors, he wants his directors to have enough control that they can have their own unique sensibility in how they could tell a story. I wonder how far that goes, because you're going to have to place notes anyway. You're the quote-unquote Kevin Feige, if you will. I don't know how much Kevin Feige he will be, because he's worked under Kevin Feige before. So I don't know if he'll try his best to keep more of his fingerprint into every last film, or will he really be interested in allowing these directors to really tell the story as he said he is. And that's what he says, and that's going to be interesting how that works. So I'm looking forward to see what directors post the next couple of films underneath his tutelage and his jurisdiction, what they will say about working with him under contract and post contract. Because a lot of times people will say it's favorable in the beginning when they're in the contract, and when they leave, that's when they say a whole lot of shit. So I will look forward to see where they go with that. But you leave it in the comments below what you think about this DCEU or DCU first slate, or however they're going to do it, Gods and Monsters. What do you think? Are you excited? I know I'm late to the party talking about it, but I'm talking about it right now, so I don't give a fuck. And at the end of the day, I got a mild interest for it. Still not as excited, but I'm not going to lie. Starting out how it was before to where I'm at right now, at least is in the direction that they would want a guy like me to go down. But with their DC slate from the series, and one last thing, the animated film, that's interesting how he's gonna have an animated film, but these characters will jump out of that and actually tell stories in a real film, and I guess it'll all be tied together. That will be fascinating how they pull that off. That's going to be very curious for me. And I think that was probably the most interesting thing that I heard out of that whole DCU slate. But again, leave it in the comments below and let me know what you guys think. Oh, and again, I'm just keep trying to sign off, and I forgot to talk about Supergirl. Now, Supergirl seemed fascinating. For one thing, when he said Supergirl, I was like, now you're going to put a Superman and a Supergirl in the same world. But this story takes place with her on a chunk of Krypton that's probably still floating out there, which they're gonna have to explain how you could be on a chunk of a planet that's not even a full cylinder with its own ecosystem. No, you have to explain that shit to me, where this chick is at. I thought she'd probably be on a different planet anyway, but on her own Krypton. It would have made sense that she landed someplace else with her own colony, and part of Krypton maybe landed on there. I don't know. Or maybe she just landed there on her own, because if you have like a part of Krypton hit another planet, you're gonna have to explain how a lot of things didn't happen to that planet that could even sustain her even being there. That's like an asteroid hitting a planet. So unless you make her land someplace else, you're gonna have to sell me on this story in a way. I don't know if they're gonna go the sci-fi route, which I would love for them to do, to try to bring some pseudoscience to make it, give it some texture and multi-layered world building to make it a lot more believable. But I'm not exactly sure which direction they're going to go in. But if you're going to tell a more deeper, darker Supergirl, that would be fascinating. I never read that comic book run, so it was a surprise that they say they wanted to go that kind of direction. So all you who's supposed to be lighthearted and darker, I really want to know what y'all going to do with these films, if they actually make it as a darker film. You know, in terms of Batman, that's the one thing that I'm very interested in, because he's going with Damian as his Robin. If Damian exists, you can still use Ben Affleck. This has to be an older Batman, if you're going to say Dick and all of them other ones had existed, because you're going right to Damian. So this is the thing that's going to be very fascinating, because you can actually still use Ben Affleck. And if you use Ben Affleck, which would be the smartest thing you'd ever do to bring back, at least bring the Zack Snyder fandom, and now you've admitted the biggest issues people ever seem to have, which was somehow Superman for some reason. And then in terms of Diana Prince, who are they going to still use Gal? That's going to be the big thing. Probably not. But are you going to use an older Batman? That's the question. And if so, I'm really, really, really fascinated if they use Ben Affleck, because Ben Affleck would be the perfect person to to play this direction or where they're planning to go with these characters. And especially if they pull Henry Cavill's cameo outside of Flash and they left Ben Affleck, and even though I heard they cut back on him, which made me think that he's not coming back, if they still have him in, which it still would make sense for the film anyway, they still leave the door open to use a Ben Affleck film and even do perhaps a Deathstroke versus Batman series or film, which would be so dope. But it would be strategic because then you could bring the Zack Snyder fandom back to it. And then what if you get Zack Snyder to direct that movie, if not Ben Affleck? And I think they're gonna bring Zack Snyder to do a film, and it might be Swamp Thing. But it would be smart because then you'll mend fences and bring back the Snyder fandom back into the fold. But you'd have to be careful and strategic how you do it, because once you bring that fandom back in, they may start, because the new fandom is now on some different type of time, or was on some different type of time. I kind of fell out of like following what was going on, but they may be on a different type of time where they might want to get back into the jousting, if you will, with the same toxic fandom that's set this whole shit off from the beginning, that made the DC space so weird these past few years. Those type of elements may come back, and they would have to be, James Gunn would have to be very strategic on knowing how to circumvent that, but also make fans along the way. And this is, again, it's going to be interesting going down the line. We could talk more about what's going on, but I'm going to leave it right here and look to you guys now on my final send off. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think about the DCEU slate. I'm going to also link you guys in the description to my first impressions watching the video, the announcement, and you already know what to do. Like, share, subscribe. See you next time, and as always, the outro. Chill.